This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Lonnie Reed, the chair of the board, reporting in. I'm going to call this meeting to order, a meeting of October 22nd, 2021 at 9:02 a.m. Hello. This is a jam-packed meeting, as you've undoubtedly seen, and it's very diverse. So, and also at 11, there's an ethics session. I think it goes from 11 to 12 for those who have not done that yet. You're asked to please hang around, and Brian Farnham's going to guide you through that. We have, let's see, next item on the agenda, public comments. Do we have any public comments?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, if I could ask you to go back to the first slide, please. We need to just amend the sequence of the agenda for other business, which is item 10, I believe. We're going to cover that under agenda item 8 under my updates for investments. That's related to the extension of time for a particular project.
Oh, okay. That's the fuel cell.
The FC Rotten project. So if we could just
so that's going to be under 8 when we do our BERT thing.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay.
If we just for the board to just agree the change of agenda sequence, I think will be in order.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right. So moving on, I'm hearing no public comments, and so we are very excited. We have some new board members that we're very excited about. So I'm going to introduce them one by one. Let's start with Vicki Hackett. So 2 of these are full-on appointees by you know, our various people who do such things, and 2 are designees. And Vicki Hackett is a designee of DEEP Commissioner Katie Dykes. She's replacing Mike Lee, and Vicki is the Deputy Commissioner of Energy. Her responsibilities include developing Connecticut's comprehensive energy strategy. She's been very engaged in that, to the Integrated Resources Plan, and overseeing the competitive procurements for clean energy resources and developing policies and programs for energy affordability, energy efficiency, and strategic electrification for transportation and housing. Clearly has a, you know, her dance card is almost full. I'm glad we have her. She served at both PURA and the Office of Consumer Counsel prior to DEEP. So welcome. Thrilled to have you.
Thank you, Lonnie. Glad to be here.
Oh, excellent.
Working with you all.
And then our next board member is Sarah Saunders, who is a designee of Treasurer Sean Wooden, and she's replacing Steve Myers. Sarah is the Assistant Treasurer for Debt Management with the Office of the Treasurer, and prior to that, she was the Director of Finance for the Rhode Island Housing, and prior to that, she worked in the Connecticut Office of the Treasurer for 10 years. And she has, I hadn't realized that, but she has energy experience. She was treasurer for Yankee Energy Systems before it was taken over as a wholly owned subsidiary of Eversource. And so she has that background as well. So we're very happy to have you, Sarah. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Hello, everybody.
Hello. The next is Dominic Grant, who is appointed by Governor Lamont to replace Kevin Walsh. Dominic is the Director of Investment at Dirk Capital Partners. His career experience spans land conservation and agricultural finance, where he has served in numerous capacities on biocarbon, working lands, and even as a lecturer in forest and ecosystem finance at the Yale School of Environment. I'm told that he and his wife also have a farm, and we're getting so much inquiry about soil carbon sequestration and all those kinds of issues. So arriving at a really good time. Welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, looking forward to working with you guys.
And then there's this lady, Laura Hoydick. That name is very familiar to me. Laura is the actually first woman mayor of Stratford, where she has been the mayor, I think, since 2017. And before that, she served as a state representative. And thrilled to have her as ranking on energy when I chaired it. And we reached across the aisle to each other and we did some heavy lifting. Changing status quos is a lot of fun at the legislature. So we actually created and helped make it happen, an energy department, the Green Bank made that happen. And so it's, and Laura, I should also say, is seriously invested in the future. She has 3 daughters and a brand new grandson. So we're thrilled to have her. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Lonnie. It's nice to be back with the team again. I'd like to say it's like old times, but it's different. And I can't wait to do some more groundbreaking programs with the Green Bank. So
Great.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to bring a lot of really important municipal experience as well now, because we have all kinds of municipal engagement going on. Oh, and next, so we need to replace our vice chair. So our vice chair was Mike Lee, and that's been the tradition in the past few years, is to have the deep representative be the vice chair. And so that means I'd like to nominate Vicki Hackett, but I want to make sure, does anybody else have any other nominations? Okay, I'm hearing nothing. So I would like to nominate Vicki Hackett. Do we hear a second?
Second, it's Matt.
Oh, hey, Matt, thank you. Okay, so we're going to nominate her to be the vice chair, and also, and that includes a resolution. So these 2 things are going to happen simultaneously. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, good. Next, we're going to deal with the consent agenda, and there are 3 items on the consent agenda for resolution approval. The first one are the, let's see, the minutes.
Lonnie, I'm happy to kind of walk through these
Oh, that'd be great.
if you'd like.
Go, Brian.
Thank you. So we use the consent agenda for 2 things. One is to work through several resolutions which are standard, the board's familiar with, doesn't require discussion. And the second thing we use the consent agenda for is to provide updates and report outs. So let me just quickly work through the 3 resolution items. The first one is the meeting minutes from the last board meeting on July 23rd. The second is the FY 2021 progress to targets. So we do a draft memo to the board in July, which is the first month of the fiscal year, summarizing the prior year's performance to targets. And why that's important is because we spend the summertime assessing the performance of the staff. So those memos play a role in terms of assessing merit, which we'll talk about later on with respect to the officers. But for the rest of the staff, that plays an important role. This time, now that we have all the data, and you'll see later on in the audit, those draft memos get updated. We left them in red line so you can see the updates to those memos. There were some slight reductions, but overall, a great year. The third item is the regular meeting schedule for the next calendar year. So thank you to everyone, all the chairs. We've set aside dates and times consistent with the dates and times this year for next year. So we've got those 3 as resolutions. And then in terms of updates and report outs, so we do try to do quarterly report outs on progress to targets for the fiscal year. So you'll see that and we'll actually be talking through each of those when we get into the program area report outs. On the second and third bullets there, the square bullets. So the first one, the under 500,000 and no more in aggregate than $1 million. So we have a process whereby the staff can approve transactions that are consistent with the comprehensive plan and budget, as long as they're under 500,000 and no more in aggregate than $1 million. When they report out to the deployment committee or the board, that clears the queue and they can continue to do those approvals. All those materials are available to the board at any time. This memo essentially says that we had no staff approvals during this period of time, so we're just reporting out. The next bullet, the under 100,000 and no more in aggregate than 500,000, has to do with projects that we've restructured or loans that we've written off. So this again is another process. Staff has the ability to approve of restructurings or write-offs under 100,000 and no more in aggregate. We don't have any of those transactions to report out, but we just wanted to share that with you all so you get a sense of the process on reporting out. IPC is Inclusive Prosperity Capital. That is a nonprofit that we co-created with DEEP and the Kresge Foundation in 2019. There is a report out for their FY 2021 performance, their year end last year, and their Q1 this year. So feel free to take a look at that. They provide significant support services to the Green Bank to help us achieve our various targets. And then lastly are some public comments. I wanted to share that with you. I've been working with Adrian and Brenda. So Adrian at the Greater Bridgeport Community Enterprises and Brenda at Operation Fuel to really look at all the things that are happening at the DOE with respect to the Justice 40 initiative and engaging nonprofits, small businesses to provide comments into the DOE. So that's been a lot of fun. We're going to continue to work together to identify opportunities to receive technical assistance and more resources from the federal government. So that's just an overview. Wanted to give you some more of that background. Lonnie, I'll turn it back to you on resolutions 2 through 4 if you want to move those.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So
Motion
moved.
to approve.
Fabulous. All in favor?
Second. Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Moving on. The next item on the agenda are they're going to be committee recommendations and updates. And the first is Audit, Compliance, and Governance Committee, and it's the new members will probably already know it. We'll learn in more detail. These subcommittees that we have do some serious work and really go at it, quite frankly. And the team, is everybody okay?
Sorry about that.
And the team, all of our professionals are readily available and review and revisit and really take in all of our comments. So let's see. So Audit, Compliance, and Governance Committee, we're going to hear from, let's see, Matt Rinelli, who chairs it, Brian Farnham, Jane Murphy, and Eric Schrago. You're on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's Matt. The committees do work, but staff does the heavy lifting, thankfully. So we have a couple of items that have come through the Audit Committee with recommendations. I will defer to Brian Farnham to go through them, but I'll just say, Brian, at the outset, I think on the motion, I think the recommendation coming out of Audit was that the operating procedures not go to a vote subject to no changes, but actually we wait till we get the comments and then vote, because optically we didn't want to appear to be getting out in front of the public. But we can cover that when we get to the resolution.
Sure, perfect. So what we do on an annual basis is we'll review all the governance documents, and you'll see those below. Typically, it's kind of a minor cleanup initiative that we do on an annual basis and then goes through the Audit Compliance Governance Committee. This year, that review had more additional changes than most years because we had our expanded scope for environmental infrastructure. So all of our documents were updated because we have things like our purpose, our mission, and it all speaks of clean energy. So we had to just add in environmental infrastructure. The only other change that we made was related to last legislative session. There was language in our enabling statute that said that the Green Bank could only finance, it could finance energy efficiency projects to 100% and renewable projects to 80%. That was removed in statute, and with that, we took that out of our bylaws because we wanted to make obviously our statute consistent with our bylaws. Those are the only changes. I don't think you would find anything that anyone would see as controversial. And if we can go to the next slide, what I would suggest that we do is that we just maybe strike the second resolve, and then from the first resolve, we can just strike the operating procedures from that. So we can just do a very clean, if okay with the board, approval of those other governance documents. We'll send out the operating procedures for public comment, and then we'll come back. If there's no public comments, then we'll just throw it on the consent agenda. If there is any material public comments, then we'll bring it back for a discussion. Would that work, Matt?
Yeah, that would be great. And just, really briefly for the other board members, that is the operating procedures are the only document that require public comment, and that's why they're being treated differently.
Okay, are there any questions or concerns? So Brian, do I need to move to do those changes, or can we just?
I think you could just say a motion to approve the resolution with the deletion of the second resolve and the reference to the operating procedures. That would work. Or
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to make a motion. Just as Brian said, I would move adoption of Resolution 5, striking operating procedures from the first resolved clause and striking the second resolved clause.
Thank you, Matt.
It's Tom. I'll second that.
Oh, Tom, hi.
Hi.
Excellent. So, all in favor of accepting the redefined Resolution 5, and dropping the bottom one? May I hear an aye?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Excellent. It passes. All right, and now we're moving on to item number 6, incentive program updates and recommendations. And that's going to be Jane Murphy and Matt Rinelli again.
Sorry, Chair Reed. We're on still agenda item 5, but we're now moving to the employee handbook.
Oh, sorry, I just saw that. Okay, sorry, I'm going through it's like a PhD dissertation here. So, so yes, all right. Still, so we go to Eric Trago, who's going to, talk about the operating procedures and that. So, Eric.
Awesome. So this is something that we try to do at least every year, just to make sure that our employee handbook is in line with the way that the organization actually runs and functions. So we last updated this last fall, and we had a handful of small changes that we needed to make. So things like bringing the technology in line with actually how we're using it and how we expect people to use it around the office or at home. Automation of acknowledgement forms. This is a recommendation by multiple auditors of ours that we need to document employees accepting the handbook and agreeing to live by the policies that we set forth in that. We had done that previously. We captured that acknowledgement upon employees joining, but not after every update. So now we've automated a form and automated all of the other acknowledgements in there. We've documented and captured everything that we're doing for health and safety, specifically with regards to COVID-19 protocols around the office. The only other big one I really want to highlight for you is around our IT management. Oops, sorry, Tom.
Go ahead.
So Okay, so the one I wanted to highlight was with regard to IT vendor management. We had previously had in place a more onerous process around reviewing all aspects of a business that we were looking to do business with from a technology perspective. And what we have done is really kind of built on what's industry best practice, and something that we've done in-house at the Green Bank as well with our auditors, which is look for some sort of industry certification. And initially, our primary thing that we'll look for is the SOC 2 certification, which is basically an industry best practice that says here you have robust controls in place, not just around your technology, but around your people, so that you're controlling who has access to your systems, who has access to your records, and it gives us that same level of comfort that our partners from a technology perspective have everything in place that we do. So it's just like an extension of our control apparatus into their world as well.
I have a quick question about your IT vendor management. Are your IT vendors audited by an outside IT vendor?
Yes.
Sure that they're doing what they need to do to protect the Green Bank?
They are. So right now, I believe all except for one of our core IT partners have the SOC 2 certification, and that SOC 2 certification is something that you actually have to have an external auditor come in. It's not an easy thing to achieve. It took us about 3 years to get everything in place and tied up before we could do our first SOC 2. We've completed it twice now, and we hopefully will have the third one complete next week. So, and for all of this, we partnered with external audit firms. So first with Bloom Shapiro, and now with Clifton Larson Allen, as they've now become. Other questions or concerns? All right.
Sarah Sanders, I have a question. I reviewed the board package and changes to the employee handbook, and maybe I was in the wrong, maybe I'm not seeing the right thing, but I saw other changes, like one of the ones that caught my eye was the addition of, I think it's a new provision, reimbursement for payment.
Right, so that was actually a policy that was previously approved by the board. We've just added it to the handbook to be in line with what the board approved over the summer, and the operational procedures around that for employees to take advantage of it. So the policy was in place. It's just, here's how people need to do, here's the documentation that we're requiring for people to participate.
Okay.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay. Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the revisions to the Green Bank Employee Handbook?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Who's that? Matt?
Yes.
Okay, Matt, seconding. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, excellent. It's approved. Moving on. All right, now I'm going to turn to Matt. We're going to deal with the draft of the annual comprehensive financial report, the audit. We just had a big meeting on this. So Matt, you want to take over?
Yes. Again, the audit committee met with the auditors, both in a meeting setting, and they also contacted us offline as they're required to do. And they've worked with staff diligently. This has been, I think we've been with these auditors, I can't remember if it's been 3 or 4 years, but it's as long as we can. They're very familiar with it. They were very complimentary. They said there were no issues getting information from staff, and they gave us a clean audit. And so that's really a great reflection on the board, and a great job by Jane and her team. And I'll let her describe that, and then maybe she can also tell us about the I think we may have covered it already, but our CAFR award that we got again earlier this year.
Yeah, this is so Jane Murphy, who does a sensational job. So Jane.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to run through our results of our annual audit. I'll run over the scope and then what we actually got for an opinion, run through some financial highlights, talk about anything that would have been required for communication should it have been found, and then give you the contact for the auditors if you have anything that you would like to reach out to them separately about. That is something that any of the board members can do. Next slide, please. So the annual audit is performed under a couple of different standards. The audit work is performed under generally accepted auditing standards. And the purpose of that is to express an opinion on the financial statements and whether or not they're actually reported and presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The second part of the audit is performed under generally accepted government auditing standards. And that is for the result of that is to provide an audit or to provide a report over the internal controls over financial reporting and compliance with laws and regulations and contracts and grants if we have any. Next slide, please. So the result of those particular items are that under generally accepted auditing standards, we are going to have an unmodified opinion, which will be issued hopefully next week by next Thursday. And under government auditing standards, there were no internal control findings noted, and that there is nothing, no instances of non-compliance and nothing that needs to be reported under government auditing standards. Next slide, please. So I'm going to run through a quick overview of our financial results. This is our statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. And with respect to our operating revenue, it increased year over year by 2.2 million. The big drivers of those were $2.5 million increase in our rec sales, and that's because new for FY21 we had the tranche 4 revenues of the SHRECs being included. So every year as we bring on more systems and those become tranched, the revenue will flow through. We'll see an increase for that again next year as well. The other thing driving it was the Reggie auction proceeds, and over the past couple of years, we've seen the allowance prices for those increasing, and for us, that resulted in almost $2 million this year. We've also seen an increase in our interest income as we have increased our portfolio of investments and done some repurchases of C-PACE loans from Clean Fund. The other thing that offsets this is a decrease in sale of energy systems. We'll talk about on the next page that you can also see that the related cost of goods sold for that decreased as well. So it's really a net zero impact. And this is where we show as we develop our PPA projects for sale. We show the sale of them and then we show the cost of sale of them. And with COVID, we slowed down a little bit in system development, but we also picked up on the development of the solar map, the state and municipal projects. And those are huge projects and will take quite a while to develop. So we'll see that those system sales will increase as those projects finish. Are there any questions? Okay, next slide, please. On the operating expense side, year over year, the expenses decreased by 10.3 million. A big piece of that was 4.7 for the provision for loan losses. And last year, if you recall, we put up a fairly sizable reserve for COVID because we had really no idea how that was going to impact our portfolio. And this year, we are not increasing that reserve, but because there's still uncertainty around what's going on, we are also not decreasing that reserve. We'll probably end up doing another evaluation of that next year. I know a couple of things that most likely we won't need the reserve for anymore, which is our SBEA portfolio, but that's really a small piece, maybe only 300,000. So we'll look at that again next year. And everything that we did with our loan loss reserve this year was the same as how we do a review every year. So there were no changes to put any extra increases or to release anything. The other decrease was the energy system sales, which I talked about on the income side. So those really offset each other. We also have a decrease in our G&A expenses of about $3 million. And year over year, the increase required in the OPEB and pension reserves this year was smaller than it was last year. And in our program expenses, we're up by about a little over $1 million. And most of that is due to hiring that we actually have finally done over the past year or year and a half. We've had a number of open positions that have been in the budget. And this year we've actually tackled down and hired quite a few of those. Are there any questions here? Hey,
Still trying to understand energy sales, if you don't mind explaining that just a little more, because it's such a big difference.
Yeah, what we do is last year we had a lot of sales. We developed a lot of the solar PPA projects, and the lion's share of the ones from last year's 4 million were to SunWealth and Skyview. We've talked about the Skyview facility. There have been increases in the limit for that. I believe we just did that a couple of board meetings ago. So as those systems are developed, we sell them to third parties at cost, and we will take a development fee, and we will, in some cases, take back a loan. And with Skyview, we actually have a facility pre-approved that we will take back loans for. So as we sell the systems, we see the income coming in, but as we take the costs we've incurred off of our books, you see an offset for the exact same amount for our cost of goods sold in energy systems. So the resulting
lower last year. It was just lower in 21.
In 21, we had a couple of projects going to Skyview, but we are really under development of the projects for Department of Corrections and a number of the municipal projects as well. So as those are very, very intensive projects, it will take a while to complete. We'll be running through and hanging up those costs in a deferred until we're ready to turn around and sell them, take our development fee off of it, and take back any loans that we may have an interest in the capital stack.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, next slide. Non-operating expenses, if they're basically flat year over year. We have an increase in our debt issuance costs of about $1 million because within this fiscal year, we did both of our issuances of Green Liberty bonds, the first in July and the second just in May. The offset of that is the interest rate swap, which is subject to fluctuations in interest rates, and that has to do with hedging of our position on our solar lease 2 tax equity program. Next slide, please. Our net position increased 12.4 million year over year, and that is our net income increased approximately that year over year. The pieces of that are our investment in capital assets went up approximately $1 million, and most of that was due to the furniture, equipment, and leasehold improvements that we are able to capitalize as a result of our move to our new office space. We have a 2.1 decrease in our non-expendable, and that non-expendable piece is primarily due to what we have as positions we need to keep for our tax equity programs for Solar Lease 2 and 3. And as those programs wind down, we end up having a lower exposure in this position. The next piece is a 6.3 million increase in our restricted for energy programs. And as a result of the issuance of our Green Liberty bonds, we're required to keep deposits, the SCARF that we have on both of those bonds, as well as any of the accounts, the revenue accounts that collect and support the operation of the indenture and the payment of the bonds. So most of those are cash deposits that actually drove that increase. And the last piece is our unrestricted net position. In that 7.4 million, most of that is coming through from the SHREC ABS bond, where the collections that we have for the SHRECs that do support that bond, although the cash increases for those do go to pay off the bond, and probably approximately $1 million of it a year falls out for us to use for any programs we'd like. It does result in a large increase to our net position because there really aren't any expenses running through the P&L to support that, short of the interest expense and the few fees that we would have to support the banking activity. Same thing occurs pretty much with SHREC Warehouse, where that's where we keep the line of credit that we have open for $10 million. So we can draw on that for operating or investment activities if we need it. And we haven't had to because we are still rich with proceeds from the Green Liberty bond issuances and working to get those deployed into some of the projects we had talked about as well, the PPA projects, but also holding on to some of those to implement our new battery storage program. So with that, once again, the SHRECs that come into that facility are pretty much all income to the bottom line and hit our surplus because there's very few costs associated with that facility. The remaining 1.4 is due to our SL2 and SL3 tax equity programs, and those, as they wind down, it's less, it becomes the surplus moves from being restricted to the partners and moves to us. Any questions? Next slide, please. So as a result of the audit, the auditors are required to communicate any of the items on this list. Probably one of the biggest ones that they normally talk about is any qualitative aspects of accounting, and that would run into anything that we would use estimates for, perhaps like the loan loss reserves or some of the other accruals that we may have on our balance sheet. And as they looked at the audit, there was nothing here that they were required to report to us. Next slide, please. All right, I guess if anybody has any questions regarding what happened with the audit or anything that you don't feel comfortable approaching me with, you'd rather do offline, this is the contact information for Ron Nosek, who is our partner on the audit, and Jessica Aniskoff, who is our director on the audit. Also, as Matt referred to earlier, this was our 6th year with formerly Bloom Shapiro. This year they are Clifton Larson Allen, and we are required to change auditors every 6 years. So we've begun the process to put an RFP out, and we're hoping to have that out and back by the end of the year. I believe we've got an Audit Compliance and Government Committee meeting scheduled for January, which is a little different than our standard schedule, and we'll be bringing our analysis of those results for selecting a new audit partner for next year to that committee. Also for FY20, we did receive our annual report award for financial reporting and excellence for the Government Finance Officers Association, and I believe it was our 7th or 8th. I think it was our 7th year in a row for getting this. So every year that we have submitted, we have gotten the reward or the award, and it is prestigious within the government finance accounting community. And that's it for me. Are there any other questions?
I have a question because where the CLA took over Bloom Shapiro, you can't consider that to have been a change in auditor that would satisfy your.
I wish. I really do wish. I'm really going to miss working with that team.
I was hoping that too, but no, that's a no-go.
Yeah, the team that would support us would be the exact same people. So in the spirit of the law over quasis, that probably would not go over very well.
I just like to say thanks, Jane and the team. You know, it's not my area of expertise, but it's great that we continue to get these clean reports, really unblemished and full cooperation, and these awards because you know, when it goes right, it's great, but when it goes bad, that's, you know, more time that Brian and his team have to explain to legislators or public officials why there's something amiss. So we take it for granted, but every minute Jane's team frees us up from having to explain something in our audit is time they can spend working on our real agenda. So it's both a good reflection and I think helpful for our overall mission. So thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
This is John Harity. I just wanted to say that the financial charts, I think this is the best that I've seen them in terms of being able to present both the figures and then with the box on the right-hand side, bring out the highlights rather than just have them verbally or on another sheet. To have it all together like that, it's like as clear as day. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Definitely a result of the comments from the ACG committee.
Jane and team continue to step it up, John. That's so right. I noticed that too as she was preparing the slides. The other thing I wanted to point out in talking to Eric is we will try at the December meeting. What we got now was the financial statistics part of the annual comprehensive financial report. There's a non-financial statistics part, which is the second half of the report, which is all the impact that we're delivering as a result of investing those financial resources to social and environmental good in Connecticut. So we have a third-party verifier in Kestrel that does that second assessment and audit. So we will bring her back in December just to go through how they look at things, you know, dive into what's there, all the metrics and things that we've been working on over the years. We think that would be a useful conversation. No need to approve anything at that point. It'll just be reporting out, but it'll be good to just kind of dig in so you can get a sense of what's in that second half of the report.
Okay, with that, we have a resolution 7, and that is to approve the annual comprehensive financial report as recommended by the Audit, Compliance, and Government Committee, provided that there are no material changes to the financial position of the Green Bank as presented. We still have a couple of minor changes to footnotes and formatting that are going through for what we hope to see early next week, and that will not have a material change to the financial position that we've presented.
Do I hear a motion to approve resolution number 7?
So moved.
A second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, excellent. Moving on. The next item on our agenda, actually, I think is an excellent idea, just throwing in my 2 cents. Creating an ad hoc committee. As you can tell, this is very complicated stuff. And as some of our board members move on to take care of their already busy lives after serving for quite a long time, we really want to be able to take advantage of that intellectual capital. And so I think Brian Farnan's going to talk about a motion to create an ad hoc committee where we can make that happen. Brian.
Thank you so much, Lonnie. So as we all talked about earlier, there is a lot of board turnover, and there are people like Matt Rinelli and Kevin Walsh who have so much knowledge and experience. We may lose them potentially as board members, but we don't want to lose them as being involved and engaged with the Green Bank. Kevin Walsh, quite frankly, is a leader in renewables, not only like in Connecticut or the United States, in the globe. And the fact that we could potentially be able to go to him and have him help out with like a project finance idea and get his insight is huge. Matt Rinelli, one of the best attorneys in Connecticut, has been with this organization all the way back to its predecessor organization. He understands this organization from an institutional knowledge perspective that rivals many staff members. So we want to have the ability to call upon them in times of good, in times of bad, to potentially have this ad hoc committee, which is enabled through our bylaws. And what would happen is they would be nominated through the chairperson, Lonnie, and then they would be approved by the board, and we can set them up, this ad hoc committee, for specific types of tasks, whether it's a unique type of deal, whether there's ever a crisis, whether there's something unique that we want to engage in, or with like our expansion. So that's the idea behind the creation of this ad hoc committee. And we're really excited about it because we may be losing some of these board members. We don't want to lose them from being involved in our organization.
Any questions, concerns? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the creation of an ad hoc advisory committee, resolution number 8?
This is Adrian, so moved.
Excellent. Do I hear a second?
Claire will second.
Thanks, Claire. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Excellent. Moving on. Okay, so now we're going to get everybody sort of up to speed on some incentive program updates and recommendations. And I think we're going to begin first with Sergio Carrillo. Sergio?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather, so bear with me if I start coughing. But this is Sergio Carrillo, Director of Incentive Programs. And I'm going to provide an update on the incentive programs to target for the first quarter, and also provide an update on 3 key projects that are currently underway. Is the Residential Solar Incentive Program, or RSIP, and the extension, or RSIP-E, the Revenue Grade Meter Replacement Project, and last but not least, the Battery Storage Program that is scheduled to launch in January of 2022. As you can see in this first slide, the incentive programs are on target, with the exception of Battery Storage Program that, as I said, is anticipated to launch in January. Related to RSIP and RSIP-E and Solar for All, or the Posigen engagement, by the end of fiscal year 2021, we only had 4 megawatts of capacity available in RSIP. But with the extension of RSIP, which had a capacity of 32 megawatts of additional solar, we were able to keep providing incentives and support the sustained orderly development of the industry, of the solar industry in the state. So that's how we were able to surpass the targets by these percentages. So that's the explanation. But overall, everything should be on target, and I'm sure Smarty will pick up later in the year. Next slide, please. Related to the residential solar incentive programs, both RCIP and RCIP-E are currently subscribed. RCIP, which has a total capacity of 350 megawatts of projects. We have 345 megawatts of completed projects, while the remaining 5 are under construction and are anticipated to complete before the end of the year. These will allow us to create regs that will be 2021 vintage, and we will be able to monetize the entire 350 megawatts of RCIP capacity. And in RCIP-E, that has a capacity of 32 megawatts, we have 8 megawatts of completed projects, while the remaining 24 megawatts are under construction. They are anticipated to complete in 2021, and a large percentage possibly at some point in 2022. The transition to the new renewable energy tariff is well underway. We've been meeting with the EDCs regularly to ensure a smooth transition to what they have labeled the Residential Renewable Energy Solutions Program. That's the name it's going to have starting in January. Even earlier this week, they issued a calendar of activities, basically a series of webinars and training opportunities for contractors to understand how the new system will operate, the application process, the application portals, etc. So we're optimistic that the transition will go very well, particularly since the transition has been taking place for a while now. We know that probably roughly 80% of all applications for solar projects are going directly to the EDCs, not requesting an incentive. So we're not seeing probably 80% of the projects that are currently being installed in the state. Is there any questions related to RCIP, RCIP-E? All right, next slide, please. Now let's talk a little bit about the revenue grade meter replacement, and let me provide some background. The revenue grade meters are the devices installed in every residential solar PV system that measures and record the solar PV production of those systems. These meters communicate their production data to our monitoring platform that is called the Locus platform via 3G and 4G networks. The transmission of these solar production data is crucial to the Green Bank for a number of reasons, including monitoring system performance, but it's particularly important because we use this data to report to Pura, and then the NIPL GIS, the system production, that we can use to create, register, and then monetize renewable energy credits, or what we call SRECs. So with the sunset of 3G cellular networks by all cellular providers that have been announced for 2022, our ability to collect the data, the production data from these systems, and then create the regs might be impacted. Close to 99% of all our RGMs, or revenue grade meters, operate in the AT&T network, and AT&T has confirmed that the shutdown of their 3G network will occur in February of 2022. So we'll still have a few months to get this done. We have identified around 5,000 homeowner-owned 3G compatible RGMs that will need to be replaced, again, to capture the production and then monetize those assets. So About in the June, July, August timeframe, we ran an RFP, down selected 3 providers to conduct the RGM replacements. We had a kickoff meeting 2 weeks ago, and the meter swap outs have started. We replaced last week. We replaced 71 RGMs. CTEC is one of the providers, did 40 swap outs. Encon did 31. These are 2 Connecticut local solar companies. The third provider, they had delays signing the PSA and could not participate in the kickoff meeting. So they're a little behind, but they are expected to start replacing meters next week. So we should expect an increase, a significant increase, a couple of weeks from now. This activity is going smoothly. And something else that we've been doing in parallel that is important to share is that we have been working with Professor Ken Gillingham of Yale to develop an algorithm to estimate the production, the solar production of the non-communicating meters. If this algorithm is successful, it will allow us to stretch the replacement of these 5,000 meters over, let's say, 2, 3, 4 years, while at the same time continue to create and monetize those RECs. It happens that the algorithm is complete, and Professor Gillingham is able to estimate the production data within a 0.01% error, which is just phenomenal. So now we are engaged with the ISO New England and the NEPL GIS, which is where the RECs are registered to later be sold, to try to implement a rule change that will allow us to create RECs using estimated data. Right now, you need an RGM to create RECs. So we're trying to implement this rule change. And Brian Farnan, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the final meeting with the NEPL GIS operating rule working group is scheduled for next Friday, and they could possibly approve this methodology.
You're jinxing it, Sergio. You're jinxing it. We hope so. I would think that would be a phenomenal result. It may take a little longer than that, but fingers crossed.
All right, next slide, please. Is there any questions related to the RGM replacement?
Yeah, I'm just curious to know what the impact on people is on replacing the meters. Like, is there any impact on, what are the impacts?
Yes, excellent. Thanks for the question. Yes, there is no impact in terms of the production of the systems. The systems, while not able to communicate, when and if the 3G network shutdown occurs, the systems will keep producing solar energy and will keep providing the homes energy. However, they will keep recording the production. It's just a matter they cannot communicate or transfer that solar production to our monitoring platform. So we are the only ones affected directly by this. The meters, the homes will continue to receive energy, all the benefits of the solar systems. It's just the green bank that will be affected. For the replacement, yes, there is we have to reach out to 5,000 homeowners, communicate with them, coordinate schedules to replace the meters, particularly if those meters are inside their homes, which makes the swap outs a little bit tricky, right? Some people are reluctant to allow people in their homes still. So that's about it.
Sergio, this is Matt, though, right? But the real impact is our ability where we've given performance-based incentives to track that, and where we've securitized those incentives to show the purchasers the performance is that really the big reason we need to do this?
Well, Matt, remember there are two types of incentives. To homeowners, we give an upfront incentive, right? So they already received all the incentives. The TPOs, or the third-party owners, is the ones that receive the PBI payments, the performance-based incentives over, quarterly, over 6 years. Those are the ones who will be impacted. And for that same reason, we believe they have an obligation to replace their meters. So we are replacing only the homeowner-owned systems that already received 100% of the incentives, and we think they have no additional incentive to go ahead and pay $500-600 for a new meter that they don't need. They already received their incentives. So those are the ones we are targeting and we are funding. Does that make sense?
Yeah, when we've securitized some of those projects, though, haven't we? Do we? As long as we have no obligation to anyone downstream, I think that makes sense.
Gotcha. All right, next slide. And last but not least is battery storage. So a little bit of background. As you might recall, PURA issued a final decision in docket 17-12-03, reopener 03, to develop a statewide battery storage program that will deploy 580 megawatts of battery storage capacity by 2030, with a 50-50 split between residential and commercial and industrial C&I customers. PURA's guiding principle with the program is to ensure access to underserved communities and to provide resilience to customers and to the electric grid. So one key objective of the program is that it should not have a negative impact on ratepayers. And to accomplish this, PURA is using a cost-effectiveness approach. PURA has requested that the program delivers a RIM, which is the ratepayer impact measure, of 1.4 or greater. And what that means is that the total benefits of the program to all ratepayers must be at least 1.4 times the costs of administering the program, meaning all the incentives and the administrative costs. The program also contemplates use cases that will require additional incentives, and those are underserved communities, grid edge customers, critical facilities, small businesses, and C&I customers with on-site fossil fuel generation. Next slide, please. So PURA's final decision included 26 orders directed to the program administrators, which is basically the Connecticut Green Bank and the utilities. These orders aim to establish the rules of engagement in a program guidelines document. So basically, how the program is going to operate, what the application process is going to be, customers' eligibility requirements, the enrollment of customers and battery systems, and the eligible technologies, the incentive levels, and the administration of those incentives, benefit cost analysis that will show the RIM of 1.4, a marketing plan, etc. As of last Friday, we completed and submitted to PURA for review and approval the program guidelines. And now we're working on the implementation of the program, meaning the selection of the EM&V, the evaluation, measurement, and verification contractor, the marketing plan, the enrollment platforms that we're going to use, the communications between Green Bank and the utilities for the transfer of battery dispatch data that we're going to need and we're going to use to report program performance, etc. That's what it's underway right now. We have accomplished a great deal so far, but there is still a lot of work to do to ensure that the program is up and running by January 1st. Is there any questions related to battery storage?
I have a question. Thank you for this description. For the benefit cost analysis, what are you considering in the sort of benefit column? I know we're looking at this within the Conservation and Load Management Fund programs as well. So I'm wondering, are you incorporating greenhouse gas reductions, meeting our Global Warming Solutions Act goals?
Yes, Commissioner Hackett, that's a great question. It's complicated. I'm not very well versed in all that, but the benefits are, the biggest benefit is the reduction of peak demand in the state, right? That's the biggest contributor to benefits. There are also, yes, emission reductions is another one of those benefits. The avoided capacity, right? As you use now less electricity, or you're going to continue to use the same amount of electricity, but you're buying less electricity from the ISO, so they're saving some electricity, which is called avoided electricity. There is avoided capacity. Now you need to buy less capacity in the ISO, so there's a wide array of benefits, and I could prepare a very detailed response to you at a later time. I will need to ask Guidehouse to help me provide that.
Sergio, let me add to your comments for the commissioner. So there are 5 different benefit cost tests, beginning from a program administrator cost test or a utility cost test, which is the conventional way of doing it. This is how the Conservation and Load Management Fund does it. There's a total resource cost test. There's a societal cost test, which is what you're getting to. How can we value all those other benefits that are typically left out of the equation? And then there's the RIM, the ratepayer impact measure, and then the participant cost test. Does all of this make economic sense to the participant? So there are all these 5 tests. In PURA's ruling, they said all those 5 tests are important, but for us, the RIM, the ratepayer impact measure, is the most important because we want to see electric ratepayer rates come down as a result of being able to dispatch battery storage to reduce peak demand. So they set the RIM at 1.4 or greater to tell the program administrators their priority, but they also clearly want the societal cost test to be greater than 1, and we do value jobs, greenhouse gas emission reductions, and the like in that societal cost test. So they'll all be tracked, but the key one that will be held accountable to will be the RIM, the ratepayer impact measure.
So Brian, are you all going to prioritize your like Posigen customers with this program first?
We're going to, yes, that is to say that we know where existing low-income families reside from a couple of perspectives. We know from our solar PV program where they are, and connecting battery storage to solar PV is the primary use case. That is where we see battery storage happening. But PURA also will allow standalone battery storage systems. So we can go to the HES income eligible list with the utilities and target those customers as well. Looking ahead, as the market transitions from the RCIP and net metering to a tariff, we anticipate focusing our efforts to try to identify Posigen, other third-party owners that want to serve low-income families, those families that live in DECD, distressed communities, those are the families that PURA has rightly prioritized as the 40% target. And the Green Bank will focus our efforts there. We'll let the market, as we've all learned over the years, we'll let the market find its way broadly, but we know that the Green Bank needs to focus on certain segments that are left behind or where there are gaps. So we will focus on those low income. Posigen being one of those developers we will work with to go back to their customers to bring batteries to them.
Just following up on that, we also supported a 40%, more than a target, but requirement for deployment in the PURA proceeding. And I think that this is I just want to point out, I think this is there's going to be a tremendous opportunity to coordinate with our new affordable housing energy retrofit program to target, larger scale multi-unit dwellings as one example, but also smaller affordable housing, dwellings with smaller number of units. I think, it's going to be really important to make sure that as we are looking toward capturing a lot of potential federal funding, that we're coordinating across the board on the rollout of that program, because that was intended to be comprehensive energy retrofits, and we can bring substantial savings to customers who need it the most by coordinating on energy efficiency, health and safety barrier remediation, and then solar plus storage and other measures as well. So just making a pitch for that as we move forward. And I think that's something we can do through our joint, our coordination with the Energy Efficiency Board.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner, for that. So through the joint committee of the Energy Efficiency Board and the Green Bank Board of Directors and DEEP, we have a 5-member joint committee, which Brenda, fingers crossed, will become the chair of. John Harity is a part of, and Commissioner Hackett is a part of. That will be a governance structure that will allow us to have some oversight on the collaboration amongst the CLNM, the utilities, and the Green Bank on things like batteries, solar efficiency, health and safety. Exactly, Commissioner. Yep.
Brian, I had or whoever, I had a question. This is John Harity. There had been discussion at one time about trying to bundle up solar plus home battery plus electric vehicle and vehicle charging stations at the home. Do any of our plans include that, or is that set aside for the moment?
I think what you're suggesting, John, is what the commissioner is suggesting too, which is a comprehensive approach of everything working together in the right direction. So I would say yes. We know that third-party owners of solar PV systems are already knowledgeable of the tariff. They're already knowledgeable of the battery storage systems. And some of them do energy efficiency. We'd like to see more of them do that. But we also know on their radar screen are electric vehicles and renewable heating and cooling, beneficial electrification. So to the extent they can tie the incentives from the CLNM together with the energy audit requirements that are now a part of the tariff to all of these incentives, I think at the end of 5 years, when we look back, we're going to see all these programs having worked together in the same direction to deliver the homeowner not only a clean energy that reduces their energy costs, batteries that make them more resilient to the impacts of climate, but also comfort in the form of more efficient heating and cooling. So I think we're going to see all those things, and that's what we're focused on.
I also like to note that the PURA decision allows for the solar installations to be sized to accommodate the PURA decision on the tariff to be sized to accommodate electrification in the future. So the installation of EV charging equipment and heat pumps. And so we'd be really interested in making, and coordinating on solar installations as they go in to size them appropriately and then come in and help those customers convert to heat pumps and therefore the savings they're getting from their solar installation is also powering the heat for their home and their vehicle charging.
Okay, any more questions, observations? You know, as we've said many times, all of these folks are available, readily available, and you can circle back and you know, pursue it in more detail. And I think, you know, the thing that we've also been trying to do is to create models that, you know, what's working best, what oversight is working best, what structures are working best, and create these models going forward that we can keep referring back to and, you know, duplicate as we move forward. Let's see. Okay, we're going to talk about financing programs, updates and recommendations. And usually that's Mackie Dietz, but he's off working on a municipal program right now, which is great, which is something we're really trying to get heavily into. So Brian Garcia.
Great. So thank you. Yes, it will be me providing the update. Mackie is out with the town of Portland, First Select Woman Susan Bransfield, all of you know, trying to finalize the final details on our power purchase agreement to help lower energy costs for the town of Portland. So I'll step in. I'll try to be fast because we've got a number of things to get to. 1 quarter into the year, we're not at least 25% of our goal as we'd like to be. You know, this is one of the things I think Mayor Hoydick referred to at the outset. However, aside from that area that we'll discuss, the pipeline is strong and staff generally feels confident about where we are. The first program is CPACE, or Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy. This is a policy that allows for a benefit assessment to be attached to a property that would allow us to finance clean energy improvements for the property using their property tax bill. The reason that's important is because it allows property owners to pay their benefit assessment through their property tax. The notion of being able to do that should reduce the cost of capital because people pay their taxes before anything else. Existing mortgage holders on the property have to consent to that project or to that benefit assessment being senior to any existing lien on the property. So CPACE has been a policy practiced by many states across the country. Connecticut demonstrated how it can work early on. So our biggest area of concern for meeting our annual target is third-party lenders for CPACE performance, which in the past has represented 75% of the capital deployed target. So in some cases for CPACE projects, the Green Bank will provide 100% of the capital for the projects. That's 25% of the time. The other 75% of the time, 100% of the capital will come from a private lender. So we haven't seen the typical level of activity from third-party lenders this first quarter as we have in the past. This year, we've only seen 2 projects for $725,000 come through from third parties. Our initial thought is that this is caused by the continued movement of the national CPACE market to larger new construction projects and away from smaller retrofit and solar projects that drove those numbers from the previous years. Many of you may know Greenworks Lending was the primary lender behind those third-party deals, and they've just moved out of the sub $500,000 market. We're working to create a partnership with them in Connecticut to make sure these projects can still find a home. And just a little bit more background on Greenworks. The 2 co-founding principals, Jessica Bailey and Ali Lieberman Cooley, worked within our finance team, within our programs team to set up CPACE in the 2013, 14, 15 period. They recognized that the program could be scaled nationally and started Greenworks Lending out of Darien, Connecticut. they're now probably the largest CPACE supporter across the country. They were acquired by Nuveen, a division of TIAA-CREF, as part of their environment social governance acquisition. So they are now focused on, as you can imagine, larger projects, as I was mentioning. So Mackie is working to try to transition some of those projects, the smaller projects that come up that they can't do, to the green bank so that we can do them. The larger new construction deals are less numerous and take more time to develop. As you can imagine, we're speaking with several lenders who have active deals in Connecticut right now, which if they close would mark significant projects towards the capital deployed goal. These are the large whales that sometimes you see, $5 million to $10 million projects coming in. The second program is the Green Bank Power Purchase Agreement, PPA. This is a program where we work with Inclusive Prosperity Capital and their tax equity partner to provide power purchase agreement financing to underserved market segments. We talked a little bit earlier about Solar MAP, the Municipal Assistance Program or Market Assistance Program, where we provide this product to towns like Brantford or like Portland. We work with the state through Lead by Example and a number of other underserved markets. Let's see, the majority of the target is based on our Solar MAP efforts, and progress continues on the FY22 group of MAP projects. The RFP for our second round of municipal MAP projects closes today. This is a portfolio of 27 projects for a total of 4.7 megawatts, and we expect to close a portion of these this year. So we can't count them until we close them, which means the contracts have to be signed. The RFP for our second round of state MAP projects closed a few weeks ago, and we're negotiating with bidders now. This portfolio is 14 projects representing 10 megawatts. We hope to have PPAs executed with the Department of Transportation, the state technical high schools, and DEEP by Q3 of this fiscal year at the latest. So again, once those contracts are signed, they're closed, then we count them. SBEA, the Small Business Energy Advantage. This is a partnership we have with Eversource Energy and Amalgamated Bank. Eversource provides to small businesses zero interest loans through an on-bill repayment mechanism. They're able to provide incentives to those small businesses and 0% interest financing on bill for measures up to a 4-year term in terms of the on-bill mechanism. What Bert and Mackie have developed is a way to provide lower cost capital working with the private sector, in this case Amalgamated Bank, which provides 90% of the capital. The Green Bank provides 10%. That low cost capital goes to purchase loans that are originated from the SBEA program. The cost of capital from our partner and the Green Bank is much lower than the utility cost of capital. So by working with the private banks, we're able to lower that cost of capital, reduce costs on ratepayers, and allow the CL&M fund to utilize those savings for other things that they want to support. So a really modeled program. The teams are working to try to extend our partnership for another 3 years, while also expanding customers' access to the capital through larger loans for longer periods of time. So beyond 4 years to potentially 7 years. So the team is working on that. And then lastly, on the multifamily set of products, as we mentioned back in June, we are refocusing our effort as Commissioner Hackett has referred to on the affordable housing. We are all very committed to trying to ensure that our most vulnerable are addressing health and safety issues, doing weatherization, energy efficiency, deploying solar, deploying battery storage, that we are really now focusing our efforts on the Green Bank Solar PPA with battery storage for affordable housing. So we're kind of, where in the past it's taken us, a while to kind of get our legs under us in this very difficult market. We now have a clear policy focus, and we're going to go after it. And hopefully we can deliver more impact as a result from it. I'm optimistic that we'll be able to do that. So that is an update on through Q1 on the financing programs. I'm happy to take any questions or try to answer them.
Any questions?
Yeah, I had a question. This is John Harity.
Go ahead, John.
Brian, don't the contractors make money on the CPACE program?
Yeah, they get the work, right? They get the.
Yeah. So what is the deal? I mean, why aren't they out there selling it?
Well, I'll have Bert provide an additional response, but typically contractors do have some of them, they're not all the same, but they've developed relationships with other third-party financiers, loan providers, so, but Bert, I don't know if you have another sense.
Well, I think there are a couple things going on, John. I think we have, first of all, we've got a change in solar programs going from the ZREC to the proposed tariff-based system. So I think that people are kind of reassessing how they want to, whether they want to move forward quickly on some solar projects or wait. I think the idea now, as we're seeing, many of them are deciding to wait, see how that tariff program, which kicks off January 1, is going to work out. The other thing that we've seen in the last few years, although that situation has changed quite dramatically, as we know, in the last few months, is our energy prices that have been much lower than in earlier years when our program was really strong, when all the programs were really strong and customers were trying to save on their energy costs. I personally, I believe that this winter is going to be a wake-up call for a number of people using energy throughout that season. So I think that we're going to get a surge of activity as people realize that they need to cut their energy use in order to lower their energy costs.
And Brian, just a quick comment. Glad to see the extension of the SBA partnership. I wanted to flag that our Greener Gov Steering Committee, which is the sort of 2.0 of Lead by Example, has been working on compiling some energy data that is now being tracked through the energy cap system. It's a more centralized energy data system that's all online and accessible to the public, to do some more proactive outreach with our agency partners to get agencies in the SBA pipeline. They are eligible for those loans to help do energy efficiency projects. And it's been a sort of raise your hand process with agencies in the past, but we're going to be shifting a little to help nudge where we see high energy users and good opportunities to take advantage of that program. So we'll bring you business if you extend it.
Thank you for the update. That was great.
And I'll quickly just mention, I know we're running short of time, but I do want to mention that as part of the restructuring or extension of the facility with Eversource, we're looking, Amalgamated Bank and Green Bank are looking at adjusting some of the caps that are in place for loans to municipalities to raise those caps, particularly for the towns that are investment grade rated, which is a substantial proportion. I think 75% have a investment grade rating. Okay, investment updates. First of all, good morning and welcome in particular to the new board members. I stand ready to get together with any and all of you for any further details that you would like on any of these updates or any of the programs that we have underway and what we're doing in the capital markets. But I'll just quickly go through this in the interest of time. A number of these transactions, these have all been previously approved in one shape, form, or the other by the board. The Posigen transaction was approved in the July meeting of the board. This is where Posigen was refinancing with a new banking syndicate led by Forbright Bank, formerly known as Congressional Bank, and that's a $150 million total facility, $140 million being provided by Forbright. as well as Participants Web Bank and Amalgamated Bank. You've heard that name before. We do a lot with Amalgamated Bank. They're a very big sustainability bank down in New York City and a couple of other places throughout the country. So in addition, we've provided a second lien credit facility, which again, the board approved in July. It's a $10 million overall facility, but most of that, $6.75 million, is participated out to a number of foundation investors. Also related to that closing was our revised performance-based incentive financing facility, which is a $10 million facility. So in the process of all the refinancings where we substantially reduced our risk in the credit facility I just described, which has been refinanced with Congressional Bank, we went down from $14 million to just above $1 million in that arrangement. So dramatically reduced our exposure there. We did increase our exposure, as was approved by the board, up to $10 million in the PBI-backed facility, and that is that's pretty much fully drawn at $9.9 million, and that's pretty much the cap of the draws, and that's going to be repaid by a cash sweep, which is now formally in place to take money directly from PBI payments that Posigen earns quarterly directly back to the Green Bank. So fully wrapped on that, and that was closed on September 28th. The Cargill Falls transaction, that was also approved by the Green Bank board in July, an additional $1 million of gap funding, together with the Department of Housing, which is putting up $1.85 million to close out the financing there. Enhanced Capital is doing tax credit financing in excess of $3 million. It's a $28 million appraised value facility, including the hydro facility there. So our exposure is about 35% loan to value, which is really good. So the hydro work is now underway. We received a key permit from CT DOT to take up part of the street so that we could finish the conduit work for the water that flows from the Quinnebog River into the turbines there. So we're looking for that to be wrapped up both in a financing sense as well as in a work sense by the end of November, which would be great to have that all wrapped up. The next item, the Green Liberty Bonds, Tranche 5 and Tranche 6. The board approved a warehouse funding facility, $10 million being provided by Webster Bank and Liberty Bank at the July meeting. And Tranche 5 would be the next one to be issued under our Green Liberty Bonds facility of issuing those bonds in the markets. Recall, we issued our last bonds in April on Earth Day, which was very successful. For the board members who were not around, we received $100 million in bids for just about $25 million in bonds. So heavily oversubscribed issuance, which was obviously very successful. So what we're going to do is, because Tranche 6, which is coming along, which will be the last tranche to be approved by PURA, is going to be rather small, what we're going to do is we're going to combine Tranche 5 with Tranche 6 and go to market. The expected time for that is the first calendar quarter in 23. So that would be an issuance of about 27 to 28 million. Our last issuance again was about 25 million. So we keep, an economic order size there in the marketplace, which is in discussing with our financial advisors at Lamont Financial. Bob Lamb is on the call today. That was a recommendation there, and we think that's the right move. It will also allow us to economize on issuance expenses, which we'd have two expenses if we do two bonds. This way we get more bang for the buck. Next item is Green Liberty Notes. That is our short-term note program. Again, that was also approved by the board in July. Looking to bring those short-term notes. What these are the Green Liberty bonds, are bonds that are $1,000 denomination bonds. These notes are actually sub 1,000. So all the way down to $100 denominations and up. The research we've done most recently suggests that there is an active market for that type of note. So we are testing this out. The board agreed to allow us to test this out. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be going into the market every quarter for an approximate issuance size of $250,000 in notes. These are backed by the Small Business Energy Advantage program that was mentioned by Brian Garcia in the previous section. And those are short-term loans. So these are short-term notes. And so it kind of fits with that program. So we're going to test the market. So this is going to be issued sometime in November is the idea. So if you're looking for some kind of Christmas present or holiday presents for children or grandchildren, I can't think of a better idea than getting them started in green investing. So get your orders in for Green Liberty notes, and we'll be sure to make sure the board has an idea about how to take part in that. Finally, the FCE Groton project is moving along. It is actually complete, mechanically complete, ready to go. They're going to be interconnecting with the grid shortly. That's kind of the final step, and those arrangements are being discussed right now. As a result of not getting this done by the end of October, which was the expectation and which was approved by the board to extend the time to close that transaction by the end of November, we are coming to you with one additional resolution, which we did not get in the board package until, well, this morning. With our apologies, but it's a simple extension. I think, Brian, if you would go to section 10, I like that green stocking stuffers map. Thank you for the Green Liberty notes. Yes, this is the extension request. It's just to take the for the board members who are new. Whenever we do a credit approval, the board makes an approval. It puts a date stamp on the approval so that we don't have out there for years and years credit extensions of credit that might not have closed. So they have a shelf life. Typically, it's 6 months. Sometimes we go 9 months. In this particular case, we're asking this to be just a little bit more than a year. We're saying let's just push this to December 31. We're totally convinced that we'll have this all wrapped up in November, but in an abundance of caution, we'll do it until the end of the year. In that case, if something should go bump in the night and we have to come back to the board, we have a board meeting in December to be able to take care of that. So with Madam Chairman, if you could please move forward on action on this resolution, I appreciate it. And again, I'm pleased to take any questions or comments now or as fit me into your schedule, and I'll be happy to talk to you about any of these or the other transactions that the Green Bank is working on.
Thank you. Go ahead. Is that John?
Yeah, it is. Just a quick comment that FCE's Vice President of Government Relations, Frank Wolak, has agreed to take on the position of, and he'll be moving to DC to be president of the U.S. Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Coalition. So he's a great advocate for fuel cells and wants to work with people in a broad way, and it'll be good for Connecticut to have him in that position.
Thanks for mentioning that, John. Yeah, I spoke with Frank a few weeks ago when he was making that transition. That is great news.
Do I hear a motion to extend the FCE Groton until December 31st of this year?
So moved, John Harity.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining?
Madam Chair, this is Matt. I have to abstain. I think we were involved with one of the banks, so just for conflict
purposes.
Okay, great. So you got that down right? Matt's abstaining? Good, good. All right. Thank you, everybody. Moving on. Oh, wait, I think, Brian, you want to talk about environmental infrastructure? Give us some updates on that.
Sorry, we're going to go back to Bert. I think he's going to
Oh.
continue on bonds.
Oh, sorry. Back to Bert.
And my computer's freezing, so, but we'll get there. All right, there we are, Bert.
Okay, great, wonderful. We're talking about the July meeting quite a lot. There was a memorandum talking about the comprehensive plan and the process that the Green Bank is undertaking, which Brian will talk about more in detail about the other aspects of that engagement with the towns and operating procedures and so forth. But here we were asked, the investments group was asked to take a look at the bonding potential that's been provided to us under Public Act 21-115. In summary, those capacities that have been enhanced for us are there, shown there. We can now go 25 years for clean energy projects. We can go up to 50 years for our new scope of work, which is environmental infrastructure. You know, those projects are all often long-lived projects, but both of these would be limited by useful life. And just because the useful life is out to 50 years, it may not be the case that you want to do a 50-year bond. You might want to do it. You'll look at the economics and talk to our financial advisor and determine what's appropriate given market conditions and so forth. So that's on the bond maturity side. On the SCARF side, we've been enhanced to get up to 25 years from 20 years. That's really to cover our clean energy projects as well as some environmental infrastructure projects. But you know, if it's a 30-year transaction for environmental infrastructure, the SCARF will cut out at 25 years. The maximum issuance is 250 million. We have currently utilized about 60 million, as is shown there. We've also issued some non-SCARF bonds, so our total issuance of bonds is over $110 million, which is really good to see across a number of programs that we have. So our capacity is currently 190 million, with tranche 5 and tranche 6 rounded at 30 million. That gives us about 160 million of issuance capacity to work with in the future. We can always go back to the legislature for more capacity, but as a group, staff thought it's best to only ask for what we think is reasonably achievable over the next year or so, and we can always go back to the legislature and say, look what we've done. There's clearly a demand. These projects are good projects, and please increase our limit. So that's going to be our approach. Next slide, please. Are you frozen, Brian? Okay, there we go. So these are the principles. These are all spelled out in the memo that was circulated to the board. I really suggest that you read that memo if you haven't had a chance to. But you know, we are all about, when we put these projects together, we do it from the point of view, whether it's rated or unrated, from the standpoint of what does an investor need to see? You need to see projects that are viable. They need to know that they're feasible, that they're actually achieving impact, which is very important for ESG investors. And critical is that the bonds can be repaid with very little concern there. With this new scope of work, we expect to have even more coordination with DEEP and DECD, Departments of Health and Agriculture. We expect to attain at not less than an A rating. All the bonds we have issued to date have achieved an A rating where they have been rated, with the exception of the subslice of the first asset-backed bonds on the SHREC program. But the majority of those bonds were rated A or A+. And we'll have ongoing monitoring to make sure the projects are doing what they're supposed to do and that their credit standing is fine. So we also want to reach all communities. You know, reaching vulnerable communities is a very important objective for us, and that's now included in our comprehensive plan, where we say by 2025, not less than 40% of investment and benefits from incentive and financing programs is to be directed to vulnerable communities. So very important for us to keep an eye on that. And we intend, even if we have to lend to municipalities whose credit rating is not quite as high as others, that we'll get a pooling effect by mixing those less creditworthy municipalities and projects in with those that are better financially situated. So our objective is to make sure that these bonds continue to be warmly received by the market, and we think we're in a good position to do so, and we've got a great credibility in the market today. Next slide, please. This was actually Brian Garcia's idea to take a look and see, you know, what is the benefit really of trying to achieve these higher ratings. We've looked at the master trust indenture. We've seen some of the other infrastructure funds or infrastructure authorities around the country. We cited 3, which you'll see on the next slide, but where they're rated AAA, their bonds are rated AAA. It really has a substantial impact, as you can see here, on the debt service costs, you know, over time. And this schedule was produced by our financial advisor, Lamont Financial, and it's reflects October 2021 market conditions. And just as a refresher, Connecticut is rated A+ at the present time as of May. Sarah Saunders, you're on the line. That's the latest change in rating. Is that right?
Yes, State GO got 4 credit rating upgrades last year, so but S&P is still A+, unfortunately.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway, it's good to see we're moving in the right direction. All right. Well,
Yep.
Next slide, please. And these are those state authorities that I was speaking about. You know, our financial advisor is actually financial advisor to both Penvest and the California iBank for their AAA SRF state revolving fund programs. They've been advisors to them for approximately 20 years each. So the California iBank, which deals with local funding of infrastructure projects, while Penvest mainly deals with water, sewer, and environmental funding. So both of those are AAA rated funds. In addition, we looked at the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, the RIB, as it's called, which is over $2 billion funded. It was originally the Clean Water Finance Agency, so handling the SRFs. Their mandate has now been expanded twice, the first to include municipal road and bridges, and then clean energy and brownfields. So it's interesting that each of these authorities started from a different direction. They started from the environmental infrastructure kind of position, or water authorities and that kind of thing, and then moving toward clean energy. We started in clean energy, and we're moving toward, you know, where they are. So we can really learn a lot from their best practices, and it's good to have Bob Lamb and Lamont Financial to help us with that. Bob, are you there?
I am.
Yeah,
I am.
You might just want to say a couple words, just introduce yourself to the board, and thanks again for all that you've done over the years to help us in getting into the bond markets there.
Sure. I'm Bob Lamb. I'm president of Lamont Financial. Started this company way back in 1987, and we focused a lot on municipal pooling ideas, things like that in various sectors. Most commonly known for creating state revolving funds generally in 1980s and 90s. But we've looked at, you know, the use of pooling techniques and the credit benefit that people get doing that. And we've found that there's a lot of strength in the various pools as you build them, particularly when you get over 50 or 100 loans in total. So we're looking at that as a strategy for the Green Bank through the Master Trust Agreement approach. We think it's going to be viable and will help us get higher ratings.
That's great. Thank you, Bob. Next slide, please. This wraps it up. So this is all part of an ongoing process. Really, Brian Garcia is going to talk about, we're trying to really kind of speak with the municipalities, in particular, various agencies of our government, do an assessment and then set our plans and priorities and determine capital needs. And then from that will flow a funding plan. So, which obviously will involve bond issuances. So happy to take any questions now, or Brian Garcia, you can move on with your presentation.
Let me just continue on, and then we'll take questions after this, so we can move into executive session. So as we work to implement environmental infrastructure, we're making steady progress across a number of areas. We had a meeting earlier this week with the DEEP team. Thank you, Commissioner, for organizing that with Commissioner Dykes and the team. It went really well. They were engaged in the conversation. The next steps that we're going to be focusing on are meeting with specific divisions within DEEP to delve deeper into their respective areas and get their guidance and feedbacks in terms of how to think about policy, programs, projects, and what's happening in general. We made some governance changes today. That's great. We'll continuously look at that. And if we need to continue to make any changes, for example, operating procedures, come back with public comment, we'll work to make those changes on an ongoing basis. Bert just worked through the bond potential there. Thank you, Bob. We'll continue to do that as we learn more and more with respect to the different projects. We've got a strategic retreat next year. We were looking to have it next month, but obviously we still ran into some COVID precautions. So stay tuned for more information there. The Director of Environmental Infrastructure, that's part of our deliverables for the year. We had anticipated having a position description at this meeting. We're just not ready. We don't know how to define the role yet. We are working with our collaborators at DEEP. There we go. I'm getting feedback. So we're learning from our collaborators at DEEP, the Department of Insurance, CERCA, the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation, to further define what this role is. So we're just going to need more time. In the meantime, we brought in Sarah Harari as an associate director. She's helping me really address strategic new initiatives that we're launching, from environmental infrastructure to battery storage, working and supporting Sergio there. And then stakeholder engagement, which I'll talk about now, working with Ashley Stewart. We hired her as a consultant to help me engage a number of groups in terms of helping us think about different segments of environmental infrastructure. So what I wanted to say was we are focused on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We now have within our comprehensive plan a 40% target by 2025 of no less than 40% of investment and benefits will inure to vulnerable communities. For our incentive and financing programs, we will continue that with environmental infrastructure. And the second lens that we're applying to all of these segments is adaptation and resilience. Our mission is to confront climate change. So we've been focused for the last decade on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Now it's to enable investment in our green economy with the focus on making us more resilient to the impacts of climate. So with those two lenses, we're looking at those across the different areas. Right now, we're having conversations on land conservation and parks and recreation. We will wrap that up at the end of November. We'll write up a memo. What did we learn? We're also going to build into that a conversation on finance, conservation finance, so we can get our minds around where cash flows move through these various things. We'll then move on to agriculture, water, waste and recycling, and environmental markets, over the course of the next fiscal year. we're being very methodical about kind of focusing in on each one, because you could imagine there's a lot of things happening here. Each of these areas, you know, Parks and Recreation has a statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. Land Conservation has the green plan. These are all very similar to the comprehensive energy strategy we deal with. So you have to dig into these things. You have to learn the policies, learn what's happening. So each of them takes a really strong focus. And Ashley is right there with me. And I involved the senior team and the rest of the staff at points where we're starting to kind of try to understand certain things that are happening. So we're having a lot of fun. We're doing some site visits, learning a lot. And again, hopefully we'll be able to come forward. Our goal is May, June, to bring forward to the Budget Operations and Compensation Committee, and then to the board, a recommendation on moving forward on environmental infrastructure. So happy to stop there and take a few quick comments before we go into executive session. Questions, comments?
I would just, this is Lonnie, I would just have all of our board members look around their own communities because what we're finding are some real world issues. I just got a phone call from former State Representative Pat Widlitz that at high tide now, the 146, the state road that allows access to her neighborhood, floods. So she couldn't get out of her neighborhood. And there are a lot of things like that. Obviously, our rail lines that go along the shoreline and stuff. So, you know, and certainly Mayor Hordick knows these kinds of things. These are the things that municipalities hear from their constituents on, and sort of try to create an inventory where we have a sense of what's going to be prioritized and when. Any questions? I think we want to just, does anybody have any questions or news or anything before we go into executive session? Okay. So we are going into executive session to deal with some personnel issues that are confidential, need some confidentiality. And before I ask for a motion, I want to say that going in with the board should be Eric Schrago, Chris Baisden, who's the Vice President of Human Resources at Connecticut Innovations, and Brian Garcia.
Great, thank you for that. And we'll do a motion to go into executive session for personnel related matters as it relates to officer compensation in a second. But I just wanted to say what I will do is I will put this meeting recording on hold. And then board members should stay on. Eric, Chris, myself will stay on. Other members who are on the line, if you can sign off, that would be great. Otherwise, I'll probably kick you out of that meeting. And then what you will see is you'll be in a lobby. When the board comes out of executive session, the door will open up and you'll be let back in. We're going to continue on this line for the ethics training. So feel free to stay on following the executive session, and we'll try to wrap that ethics training up at noon. Okay, so I'm going to stop the, actually, if you want to move the motion to move into executive session, I'll stop the recording.
Do I hear a motion to move into executive session?
So moved, John Harity.
Thanks, John. Do I hear a second?
Laura Hoydick, second.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Abstaining? Good.
Okay,
Let's
great.
go.
All right, I'm going to stop recording.
This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, you can join in now. It's starting up now. I gotta go. Come in.
Hello.
Okay, you're all set, Lonnie. On the
Okay. We're back into public session. Do I hear a motion to approve resolution number 9 relative to executive compensation?
Lonnie, it's Laura Hoydick. I will make that motion.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second, John Harity.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
I'm abstaining, Vicki Hackett.
And Claire Coleman as well.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, the motion passes. And I'm about to adjourn, but remember to stay tuned for executive session if you can. And if you can't, we're going to record it and send a link so you can do it when your time permits. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and staying. This was a very complicated, meeting and lots of things to approve. And so I really appreciate it and wishing you all a great weekend. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, wait a minute. I think I have to adjourn. So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, Adrian.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye,
Thank you, everybody. Have a
bye-bye.
great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, Lonnie. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
And I don't want to lose any staff. That wasn't for you to adjourn. So thank you all for staying on, and thank you for pushing back in the time period. Board meeting obviously went over, but a lot of great stuff that they were doing in that meeting. I am very happy. We have Peter Lewandowski, who is the head of our ethics organization in the state of Connecticut. Nancy DiDacola, who we've had in the past, who's amazing, and Peter's great too. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Peter, seeing that we've already gone a little bit late, so I apologize for that, and turn it over to you. Thank you so much, Peter, for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I'm assuming that my mic works, that you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. Again, thank you for having me. Normally, Nancy Nicolescu, our Director of Education, conducts these meetings, these trainings. But again, she's not feeling well, so I'm in her place. I know you had a lengthy meeting, and just to make sure that this is just the staff of the Green Bank, or is this also? We have members of the board as well.
We have some board members also. Some of our board members are also with other agencies, so they'll be getting their ethics training through them, whether it's OPM or DEEP, and then but others are staying on, and the ones that aren't, either we'll provide other options for them.
Got it. Thank you, Brian. That's helpful, because this way I know how to tailor this presentation in terms of the audience. So I'll just cover a few basic subject matter items under the Code of Ethics. Some of you have already had this training. Obviously, there are a couple of new things, but by and large, if you've heard this before, this is more of a refresher for you. Clearly, the main points will involve gifts and necessary expenses, conflict issues, also outside employment, revolving door, and briefly at the very end, SFIs. As you already know, all public officials, state employees, lobbyists, and state contractors are subject to the state codes of ethics, and generally, if you're looking for a common thread for all the provisions of the codes of ethics that we administer, the common thread is financial misuse of office or position for financial gain. That's generally when you look at gifts or conflicts or what have you. That's usually the basic thrust of the code of ethics. Obviously, the discipline of ethics is very broad. You can be approached by your neighbor about ethics. You can talk to your kids about ethics. But when we talk about here in our jobs on the state level, it's really financial conflicts of interest. That's the gist of what we administer. At the outset, Nancy and we all emphasize, it is critical whenever you're faced with an issue, whether you have a question or whatever, always seek advice from our office. We're available. We are your resource to you. So if you have questions about outside employment, you're leaving the state, revolving door questions, by all means, please seek advice. Some of these questions are very fact specific, so there may be very particular or nuanced to you, to your situation. There may also be questions of kind of general applicability, so it all depends. But whenever you have any doubt, please contact our office. Also, each agency, including quasi-public agencies, may have their own internal codes of ethics or ethics policies, to be more specific. And those policies may be more restrictive or may be addressing issues, may address issues that are specific to your agency. So it's important to familiarize yourself with that. Now, they can be more restrictive, they cannot be less restrictive than the state code of ethics. Really, the state code of ethics is the foundation, it's the basis of our ethical conduct. Also, some of you within the agency may be designated by law as mandatory reporters of ethics violations. And those folks are generally agency heads, their deputies, folks who are in charge of procurement at your agency, folks who are in charge of human resources. So keep in mind that by law, you are required to be a mandatory reporter if someone comes to you with substantiated allegation and you have reasonable belief to that violation did indeed occur. So you have to report those findings to our office when they come to your attention. All right, I'll move quickly to these basic provisions. We'll start with gifts. Generally, the policy is do not accept gifts. We have a statutory definition of what a gift is, and generally it is anything of value that's directly or indirectly received unless consideration of equal value is provided. Now we have several gift exceptions, and I will only cover the most common ones that you may encounter in your state service. There are also other gift exceptions that deal with particular situations, but again, the basic ones, deal with token items, accepting anything of value that's under $10. That's permissible. Your cup of coffee, whatever. That when you interact, particularly with folks that seek to do business with your agency or are doing business with your agency. And before we actually go to the exceptions, just a quick overview of who are the potential donors that you may encounter. And obviously, the folks that you really have to be concerned about are the so-called restricted or regulated donors. They are obviously the contractors, the folks who are seeking or are doing business with your agency, registered lobbyists, and those are the main or the likely folks who would fall into that restricted category. And for them, strict gift limits apply, and they are prohibited from giving a prohibited gift, and also you are prohibited from accepting a prohibited gift, other than those exceptions that I'll cover very soon. And you have also another group of folks, the secondary group of potential donors are considered non-restricted, but they're giving something to you by virtue of your service, state service, or your job at the Green Bank. Let's say it could be your counterpart, for example, in another state. Let's say another state that has a similar agency such as yours may hold a conference, and let's say they provide certain items to you. Clearly, they're provided to you by virtue of your employment with the Green Bank, not because you for some other reasons. So those are obviously also considered, there may be some restrictions imposed on those folks. They're considered non-restricted, but limits do apply. And usually it's all the gift exceptions that I'll discuss plus additional $100. And finally, you have the last group of folks who are giving you something by virtue, that is absolutely not connected in any way to your state employment, to your work for the Green Bank, to your family members, your friends and so on. Just keep in mindful if you have a longtime friend who with whom you've been exchanging gifts on the annual basis for holidays or what have you, if they ever become a registered lobbyist in this state, then obviously strict gift limits would be triggered, and you would be subject to the limits that I'll discuss now. Now, I've mentioned already token items. There are also food and beverage exceptions. When someone asks you to go out to lunch, food and beverage up to $50 per year per source, so it applies to a specific donor, and that donor who pays for that lunch has to be present. So gift certificates to restaurants are not permissible if they're offered to you by a restricted donor. Token items, rebates and discounts that are generally available to the public are fine. For example, let's say in your, in your world, for example, there may be provisions of discounts and so on to promote green energy, and you may partake in them so long these are offered and available to the general public. So that's fine. Ceremonial plaques, if you receive an award from an organization in your official capacity, or any I don't know how we would disclose, whether plaques or awards that you can hang on the wall, those have to be limited up to $100 if, again, they're given to you by virtue of your state position, your quasi-public employment. Other gift giving, obviously, there are major life events that you may partake in. Let's say a lobbyist may offer you, and that this provision applies to lobbyists only if we're talking about restricted donors. They may give you a major life event, gift for a major life event, i.e. wedding, birth of a child, retirement from state service, religious, entry into religious adulthood, you have death in a family. That's permitted, can only be provided by lobbyists. However, some lobbyists also wear state contractor hat, so that's fine. However, state contractors who are not lobbyists may not utilize the major life gift exception. So again, in that regard, that's fine. Now, gift exceptions, major life event or any other gifts are permissible among colleagues. Let's say you may have a colleague within your agency that is getting married. Colleagues may utilize the major life event gift exception as well. For ordinary gifts that are not considered major life events, the gift giving among colleagues is not limited in any way. However, if we are talking about someone who is in supervisory or subordinate relationship, and it goes up and down the chain of command, excuse me, those type of gifts are limited to up to $100 per gift. Another area of gift giving you may encounter, and that's fairly common, is gifts to the state. You may have organizations, both restricted and non-restricted, that want to offer items for state use by a state agency, including quasi-public agency. Gifts to the state are permissible. Lobbyists obviously have financial obligations, financial reporting obligations to report those gifts on their financial reports. You may also utilize gift to the state if you are an employee who is being invited to a conference, let's say out-of-state conference by some national organization. They're inviting you by virtue of your official position, but you're being invited there in your passive role. In other words, you were there to learn something, new developments, and let's say clean energy financing, using that as an example. And you have experts, and they obviously impart certain knowledge to you. You may attend a conference for that purpose to learn something, and that is permissible under the gifts to the state. It has to be reported to the Office of State Ethics within 30 days of attending the conference, within 30 days of receiving benefits for traveling to the conference, staying in a hotel, and any registration fees. Clearly, any additional perks that are offered by the organizers of the conference, let's say Broadway shows, golfing, or what have you, more type of on the entertainment side of things, that has to be covered out of pocket. It's not permitted under gifts to the state, because essentially the policy behind gifts to the state is, what would the state pay to send you out to the conference to learn something? And clearly the states, I doubt, would be willing to pay for golf or Broadway shows. So that's generally the approach for gifts to the state. Now, there is a mirror provision for that. It's called necessary expenses. Now, the difference between necessary expenses, sometimes folks think of it as a gift. It's not a gift. It kind of mirrors the gifts to the state requirements, but with two major distinctions. One, it's not considered a gift because under necessary expenses, you are attending an event to provide your expertise to others. You are there to impart knowledge on others. You are invited as a guest speaker, as a panelist, moderator of the panel. And under necessary expenses, unlike under gifts to the state where your attendance can be passive, under necessary expenses, there is a requirement for active participation. So you really have to be invited as a speaker. You cannot just be a guest in the audience. And again, similar reporting rules apply within 30 days, and also it's limited to those necessary items that are furnished to you by the organizer, by the sponsor of the event, i.e. hotel, lodging, food, beverages, and travel costs. I think that's all on gifts and necessary expenses. I'll move on to the next major area, and that is conflicts of interest. You most likely have heard about substantial and direct conflicts, and also potential conflicts. Under our code, obviously the substantial conflicts require mandatory recusal whenever you're faced with one. Under the provision that deals with substantial conflicts, you have a direct conflict if you believe or expect that your immediate family members, any associated businesses will derive some distinct financial benefit that is distinct from other groups, other organizations, general population, and so on. So again, it would be a direct conflict using that example of rebates, receiving a rebate that's exclusive to you, where you award yourself a rebate that's not available to the general public about some kind of purchase of clean energy product and so on. So, because again, it will be self-serving, it is for your own benefit, and it's limited and as to who benefits. It's either you, your family member, or any associated business. Now, direct conflicts have to be immediate. There's no intervening condition required. So it's essentially doing X, and the result is your financial benefit that it's exclusive to you. As I said, recusal is required in those situations. Now, you may also encounter potential conflicts, and under potential conflicts, a public official or a state employee normally would be faced with a conflict where they have a reasonable expectation that they will likely derive financial benefit from their official action. And again, the standard, the test for potential conflicts is that there's this reasonable expectation that you will derive financial benefit, and also either your family members, immediate family members, or any associated businesses. It has to be reasonable expectation, likely that is, as opposed to merely conceivable. We know that in this world, anything is possible, but this has to be something that is likely to happen if you take official action, that you will derive financial benefit. Now, unlike under substantial conflicts, you do have an option of recusing yourself from under potential conflicts, but you also have an option to, that there is, if you're a board member, you may, obviously, you are required to make a statement. If you wish to act on a given potential conflict, you have to disclose that conflict on the record in front of the board, and you must make a statement that that despite the conflict, you are acting in the best interest of the general public. That's a requirement for board members. You either have to recuse yourself or issue that statement, and a copy of the statement has to be furnished to the Office of State Ethics as well, in addition to placing it on the record of your proceeding. For employees of your agency, if you encounter, for staff members, if you encounter a potential conflict, you're required to either recuse yourself or, you're required to inform your immediate supervisor, who will then assign the matter that creates a potential conflict to a fellow employee who's either of equal rank or someone who is another supervisor. It cannot be a subordinate to whom that would be assigned. And finally, again, one more note about potential conflicts. Just like under substantial conflicts, if the benefit accrues to the general public, a broader universe of folks, a group of individuals than just, let's say, a small universe of your agency, or again, it has to be much greater, kind of in that sense, then it's okay to act. And finally, I'm going to touch upon just briefly, because this issue is raised before us frequently. Are you subject to an appearance of a conflict? The answer is no. Under Connecticut law, the ethics codes are silent with respect to appearances of a conflict. You have no legal obligation to abstain when you are faced with an appearance. Now, having said that, what we tell folks is that's really left to your discretion. Some folks, especially if you're more of a public figure and subject to a greater public scrutiny in the media, you may take a pause and decide, well, the optics are not good. And you may decide, and again, that's left to your discretion, to abstain from taking official action, even if it's just an issue of an appearance. Again, it's not legally required, but just to let you know that under our law, the code is silent with respect to appearances. Now, I'm going to move to, so that's all on conflicts. The other major area is obviously outside employment. And whenever we deal with outside employment questions, those are very fact-driven. We highly recommend for both outside employment and revolving door questions to contact our office if you are faced with one, because especially if the outside employment is somewhat close to what you do for the state, for your quasi-public agency, the subject matter, and so on. Now, clearly, if you're pursuing outside employment that has no connection whatsoever to what you do for the state, to what you do for the Green Bank, you don't have to contact us. That's permissible, so long as you do it on your private time and not on state time. and you do not utilize state resources to facilitate that outside employment. Now, for situations where there may be some overlap, or for example, it deals with a subject matter that's somewhat close to what you do for the state, clearly there are specific guardrails in place. One is you may not accept outside employment that will impair your independence of judgment as to your state duties. So clearly working for seeking employment with a company that has regular business before a green bank, that would be problematic. Also, you may not use your office, your position, to advance your outside employment and also benefit your private employer in the context of your state job. And finally, you may not disclose any confidential information that you've learned in your state service and your work for the benefit of your private employer. But as I said, again, it all depends. As I said, it's fact-driven. It all depends who you're pursuing the outside employment, private employment with, and that's why it's important to check with not only with your agency. You may have an internal policy. Some agencies, for example, require clearance, internal clearance for private employment. And also, if you have additional questions from us, absolutely, please contact us. Now, one other major topic I want to touch upon is revolving door questions. Now, there's been a lot of talk about upcoming wave of retirements in state service, involving state service, especially next year. So revolving door provisions are really a hot topic with our office. We're getting many questions in that area. There are essentially 4 basic provisions that deal with revolving door questions. There are 2, what we call them, lifetime prohibitions, and 2 one-year prohibitions involving post-state activities. Quickly on the lifetime bans, the first one is common sense ban. You cannot use confidential information you've learned in state service in your state work for your benefit and benefit of others following your retirement from state service. The other one is site switching prohibition, and this one is really narrow in its application, and it applies to situations where, for example, you were directly, personally, and substantially involved in a negotiation or award of a contract grant to a private party, and you end up seeking post-state employment with that party to that contract. What that provision prohibits you from doing is representing that private party before Green Bank regarding that particular contract you handled while in state service. You may handle other matters that are related to the Green Bank, but not that particular matter that you've worked on while being employed by the Green Bank. This is a lifetime prohibition, and again, it applies specifically when there are some controversy. There may be litigation involved regarding the contract, or some other aspects where the interests of the state, of the Green Bank, are at odds with your private post-state employer. So again, it's a lifetime ban on that particular matter, involvement in that particular matter. Then we have 2 one-year bans involving one is what we call a cooling off provision. It essentially prohibits you from representing anyone, and here are the key terms, for compensation before your former employer for 1 year from the time you leave state service. So if you end up working for someone and you will have to abstain from representing that private employer before the Green Bank for 1 year. You may represent that private employer before any other state agency, any other quasi-public agency. It's an agency-specific prohibition, so it applies only to your former agency. Now, I think some board members, there may be board members who are also involved or represent other agencies or serve for other agencies. That prohibition, the cooling off prohibition, applies to each agency in which you serve. So again, it's for 1 year. And again, it's for compensated representation. So if, let's say, you decide you truly retire and you're not deriving you're not engaging in any other employment, you may represent someone pro bono within that 1 year before your former agency. But again, it has to be truly pro bono representation. It's not kind of a future promise, a promise of future compensation, let's say 1 year from now, because that really defeats the whole purpose of the law. So there has to be absolutely no compensation involved in that type of permitted representation. And finally, the last item, it's a 1 year ban, and there's a provision that is specific to quasi-public boards, and it deals with quasi-public board members, where it says that no member or director of a quasi-public agency who participates substantially and personally in a negotiation award of a contract in excess of $50,000. So the contract has to be valued more than $50,000. And it also applies to folks who supervise negotiation or oversee the entire contracting process. You may not seek, accept, or hold employment with a party to that type of a contract for a period of 1 year after the signing of the contract. So again, the sequence of events has to be is important here. So if the contract's been signed and then you leave state service, you are prohibited from pursuing employment with the recipient of that contract for 1 year from the time the contract has been signed. There is another mirror provision in the code that deals with the prohibition on pursuing employment, and it's broader in scope, in the sense it's broader because it doesn't apply necessarily just to quasi-public. It applies to all executive branch agencies. It's pursuing employment if you're involved in $50,000 contracts valued at $50,000 plus, pursuing employment with a party to that contract within, if the contract was signed within the final year of your state service. So that's all on in terms of revolving door questions. I've also mentioned SFIs as one topic of import. One update regarding those, for those of you who file statements of financial interests with our office, and those are due every year on May 1st, and you are required to report various things for the preceding calendar year. As of October 1 this year, we are only dealing with electronic filings of statements of financial interests. So we're no longer are accepting paper submissions of statements of financial interest. So if you've been doing or filing paper SFIs with our office up until now, you will have to switch to electronic format. And it's very straightforward. I think the first filing is maybe more involved because you have to do all the input. But once you do it, everything is actually held there. So you just have to do updates from year to year. So it's fairly straightforward. Those of you who already file electronically know that it's straightforward than more straightforward than paper version or paper filing. I will stop now and I'll entertain any questions you may have. I just wanted to give you the basic overview of things. One aspect, I usually try not to focus on enforcement of things, but it's important just in case if we have folks who transgress and have to deal with our enforcement division. Our enforcement division pursues enforcement of ethics upon filing of complaint. That complaint can be filed with our office by any member of the public, anyone, and our folks in enforcement conduct quickly initial investigation, preliminary investigations, just the basics to determine whether there's jurisdiction of our involving our office, subject matter issues, and so on, and then they quickly determine if there are grounds, if there's substantial evidence to proceed further to a probable cause hearing, then they will notify the subject of the complaint, the respondent. Now, if they also determine that there's really no grounds to pursue a complaint further because for lack of jurisdiction or what other reasons, folks who've been the subject of complaint will receive very quickly, and usually within 5 days, 2 things: a notice that a complaint's been filed against them, and second, automatic dismissal. And the purpose of this is for you not to lawyer up, because obviously hiring an attorney can be an expensive endeavor, especially in those situations where there's nothing for you to be concerned about because the complaint doesn't contain true allegations or whatever reason. Now, once it's determined that indeed complaint is valid, proceeds to probable cause hearing, all the proceedings, the filing of the complaint, initial investigations, and the probable cause hearing itself is confidential. Things open up only or become public when a judge, trial or free, makes a finding of probable cause. And then obviously we proceed to an open hearing before our board, and the board determines whether there's a finding of ethics violation. But there's an entire mechanism, procedural mechanism and due process mechanism for you to, when you're dealing with enforcement. Also, one last thing before I take any questions, it's critical to emphasize that the Office of State Ethics has an internal firewall between legal advice side of, that is compliance side of our work, and enforcement. And the purpose of this is for you to be at peace in terms of, and also comfortable in approaching us and asking a legal question, advice question. It's obviously important to ask for advice before you take official action, and that shouldn't be grounds. The mere fact that you were contacting our office to obtain advice, even if it's determined that, well, you may already have violated the code, that communication with the compliance side of our office, with the legal division, cannot be subject for an enforcement proceeding. And it's really well-designed process because, again, that will encourage folks to ask questions, to seek advice. This way you can avoid any engagement with our enforcement division. Okay, I'll stop right now and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you so much, Chair. And quite honestly, the questions that we typically get, like if it's from a board director, it's like, hey, I have some connection to this organization. And the reality is most of our resolutions pass by unanimous vote. So I'm like, when there's any question, typically, unless it gets really silly and removed, I say just recuse yourself. And then from the staff level, we'll get questions of like, hey, so-and-so wants to invite me to a golf outing or to a concert. And then I'm usually having to be the bad guy and say, that's not something that you can do. If you can figure out what the fair market value of it is, you could potentially pay for it. And then the other item that often comes up is, hey, they want to take us out to dinner, and the monetary limit on what they can spend while they're present for you. I mean, those are the big things. Then the holiday time, obviously, with the gift baskets and making sure that those are shared with everyone. But those are kind of traditional. We haven't really had many revolving door issues. The big issue with that came about when we spun out a nonprofit, but then we went to the ethics board to get approval for it. So that So it's been, knock on wood, we've had a pretty decent handle on, the ethics questions and no major curveballs.
Oh, that's great. That's good. And by the way, about those gifts, you may be attended to a golf outing or dinner. You also have an option. You have 30 days to compensate the donor, or if you decide, I don't want to be. Let's say you're dealing with someone who has to report that type of benefit under financial reports, i.e., a lobbyist. Folks sometimes decide after the event, after the golf or dinner, I'm going to reimburse that person, so I'm not showing up under financial reports. And it's only the lobbyists who are required to report the provision of some of the items. So you always have 30 days to reimburse. That's always an option.
Yeah, and the other item that comes up is travel. Hey, they want to pay for me to go to this conference in Arizona, or they want, they're to speak. I'm like, okay, well, you're going to go through our existing protocol where we're going to reimburse you, and you're going to do it through a reimbursement to us, and then they will reimburse the Green Bank directly, is how we handle that. So
okay, that's fine. Yeah, as long as, there is some audio thing. As long as it's papered, in other words, it's documented that clearly the reimbursement occurred between the bank and the so it's essentially the bank that is the Green Bank is paying for the employee.
Correct. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. And that's it. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions. I know we have a hard stop, I think, at 12:15. But if there's any other questions, please ask them now.
I know you had a long meeting, so.
All right, perfect. All right, well, thank you guys so much. And if there are any other follow-up questions, obviously anyone on this can send them to me. They can send them directly to the Office of State Ethics. And, the saying really does hold true. When in doubt, seek out and ask for advice.
Thanks very much.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks, Peter. Thanks,
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.